Okay, on behalf of President John Samuelson, I'd like to welcome you all, especially those who've never been here before, to our beautiful Union Hall, home of Transport Workers Union Local 100. Mr. Samuelson unfortunately could not be present. However, we have the other members of the union leadership here. Seated to my left is Administrative Vice President Nelson Rivera. Recording Secretary Latanya Cribs-Soray. And Vice President from Car Equipment, oh God, I was just saying your name, Shirley Martin. She's newly appointed, so it's good to talk. And to my immediate left, Maintenance of Way Vice President Tony Utano. Okay. Yeah. So again, welcome to Union Hall. On this, the third annual event of what we call the 9/11 Recognition Awards. This, the 16th anniversary of that really horrible day that is pretty vivid in my mind, and I'm pretty sure in the minds of everyone else here in attendance. First, we're going to begin with a pledge of allegiance, please, to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. We're going to have a moment of silence for all our fallen Union brothers, and of course those who perished on that day 16 years ago.
Ronnie Ritz. Carmine Labasco.
Jimmy Willis.
Pete Foley.
Wayne McMenamy.
Renee English.
Okay, thank you. Can I have your seat, please? Okay, we're going to have opening remarks from Maintenance of Way Vice President Tony Utano.
Everybody out there good? Okay. 16 years ago, New York City Transit faced a catastrophe of never-before-seen proportions. America was under attack. The largest towers in New York were down, and thousands of tons of debris littered lower Manhattan. Thankfully, Transit had the needed resources that day. Our members, their expertise, and the equipment they drove and carried. The history that has been written about 9/11 generally does not cover the work that our members in Transit had to do that day. That's why we're here, to recognize those who responded, both because they were directed to the disaster site and because they volunteered to go in hope that they could be of some use in the rescue and recovery effort. There were thousands of tons of steel and rubble that needed to be removed so that we could search for victims. Hundreds of cars chalked in the streets of lower Manhattan, covered with debris. Subway stations were covered with ash. Radio communication and cell services were down. There was only one agency that could address all of these needs and do it quickly with trained people who were known and trusted to venture into the site of a terrorist attack. All of our titles were involved after the Transit assigned over 3,000 to rescue and recovery effort. track workers, structure maintainers, station cleaners, light maintainers, car inspectors, bus operators. Everyone had an essential role to play at Ground Zero. No single transit worker perished at 9/11, but many are suffering now. Just as is in the case with our brothers and sisters in the emergency services, transit workers who log time at Ground Zero are coming down with deadly illnesses, primarily respiratory and cancer. Several dozens have received payouts from federal government, and you will see some of them tonight. We have struck a special commemorative medal for them. The vast majority of 9/11 responders are not sick today, but are eligible for our recognition pin, which we are also presenting to our members tonight. The medals and pins are tokens of the debt we owe them as Americans and as fellow TWU members. This way, to honor them in our Union Hall and through the media to wider public, because this is a story that must be told until our New York City Transit TWU 9/11 responders get the recognition so richly deserved. Thank you.
Okay, Tony, that was great, thank you. Okay, the next thing on the program is something that we've done in the prior two events. It's something that certainly for me, and I would imagine I speak for most folks here, it doesn't get old. It's something that lives in my mind, but you know, we feel it necessary to show it at each event, and that is the 9/11 documentary that was put together by the folks at Transit, now defunct TV magazine that used to air on public television back in the day. It's a great documentary. It was originally about an hour in length. It was put together by a filmmaker, a very talented guy, guy who's won a lot of industry awards, Mr. Winston Mitchell. I don't know if he's here, if he made it here this year, but really, really great guy. And so we, with his permission, we edited it down to roughly 20 minutes, and we're going to show it now. It's really great.
We have reports that it was a plane that struck the World Trade Center. And we're being told this whole area is being shut down. There's pieces of debris and other matter all over the area.
Mike, this is a big one, Mike. We heard it's a plane crash, but we don't know yet.
My best for you is try and get out of there as soon as you can, okay? Just get out of there.
On September the 11th, 2001, countless heroes died. But against the backdrop of chaos and carnage, others were born. During the first few moments following the terrorist attack on our city, a line of transit workers stood shoulder to shoulder with fire, police, EMS employees. With 7 subway stations and 50 bus stops in the area, the New York City transit workers felt a strong connection with the hundreds of thousands of commuters and tourists they brought to the World Trade Center area each day.
We are standing 1,377 feet above Manhattan on the world's highest man-made observation deck. Right now we're overlooking Brooklyn, but you get to see Midtown Manhattan, the Statue of Liberty, Queens, everything from here, Bronx, on a nice clear day. With just the naked eye, you can see as far as Coney Island, probably about 25 miles, 30 miles. With the binoculars, 80.
How about the unique view here about the feeling of Manhattan Island?
You know, it's an interesting thing with views. First of all, man has always been fascinated by heights, whether it's climbing to the top of Mount Fuji or looking at the world from, you know, the bird's eye view, as we say. There are some obvious things. We were downstairs a few minutes ago and there was a gentleman speaking in Japanese, and there was very little that I understood, except that he pointed down and said to his mother, "Matchbox cars," which gives you a feeling of, I guess, omnipotence when you're up here and everything's so small. but also at the same time in significance, because you have this vast city in front of you. As I indicated, we have a 365-degree walk-around promenade, which means that you can see all of the boroughs and beyond a little bit.
Laura, what do people encounter when they come up onto the observation deck?
Well, the first thing that they're going to encounter is the wonderful vistas. We have windows that go actually below the floor to the ceiling. You can step down into a well area and look at the city between your feet, which is kind of, it's a little scary, but wonderful, absolutely wonderful. They will, in addition to the vistas, of course, we have at our souvenir shops. We have all the simulated helicopter ride and the monitors, and we have a food court, which is interesting food court because it's themed, I gather, very realistically after a MTA subway stop, and two shiny stainless steel doors that have an MTA logo on it. And standing on the 107th floor, 1,310 feet above Manhattan, we do have folks that come and ask us where exactly they pick up the train.
The morning rush to Manhattan was in full swing at 8:46 a.m. September the 11th. Well, that would be the last normal day for the World Trade Center and our city.
On the morning of September 11th, I was sitting here on Greenwich and Park Place with my fiance, and our sunroof was open, and all of a sudden I hear this plane overhead, and I can hear him gun the engine, and I'll never forget the sound because it went, bam!
Winston, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Winston, you're a photographer?
Yeah, I work for a transit news.
Okay, can you tell us what you saw, Winston?
Yeah, I'm sitting in the car, and I heard this plane overhead, and then all of a sudden, I thought it sounded kind of loud, and I looked up, and all of a sudden it smashed right dead into the center of the World Trade Center. Big flash of flame, fire coming up all over there, all the bricks, a huge hole right now. It almost like the plane probably went through, I'm not sure.
Winston, can you see, are you on the north side there where the plane made contact?
Yes, I am.
Now, when you say a huge hole, one of our earlier officers, Libby Clark, said not much of the plane came down off the building. Much of it
went totally into the building.
It's in the building, from what you can see.
Right.
Now, can you see if there's a lot of debris downstairs, Winston?
No, because it looks like it's inverted. With the impact, everything went inside the building.
Inside.
The only thing that came out was a little bit of the outside awning. But I'd say the hole is, I'm just getting a better look right now.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd say the hole takes about 6, 7 floors were taken out. And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay. Okay, just put Winston on pause there for just a moment.
Okay, the whole building just exploded some more. The whole top part.
Okay.
The building's still intact. People are running up the street. Am I still connected?
Winston, this would support probably what Libby and you both said, that perhaps the fuselage was in the building that would cause a second explosion such as that.
That's what just happened then.
That certainly.
Yeah, people are running up.
We are getting word that perhaps.
Okay, hold on. The people here everybody's panicking.
station was getting smoke, and we started entering the station. I started hitting the horn. Whenever we bypassed the station, we first hit the horn, I don't know, cloths, rags, anything they really had, and waving frantically. These people were scared, and I mean, these people were really scared. And I remember this one woman, I saw her eyes. It was like, even though her face was covered, all you saw was fear. Everybody on that platform was scared. I let my conductor know that we're gonna pick these people up. As he agreed, he had no problem with that. As was heading the end of the station to stop the train, I tried to let command center know that they need to get people down there, that there's still a lot of people on the platform. Conductor made another announcement that not to try to get off the train, that it's an emergency and we're just picking people up. And luckily, for the most part, we had a rush hour crowd, but they were cooperative. Only one person tried to get off the train. And I don't know if it was the station agent at near his location or if it was other customers convinced him to get back on the train, but everybody got on. Command by then had gotten back to me, authorizing me to stop and pick them up. But that was already being done. There's just no way to leave them. You can't just leave them like that.
While subway crews and station workers heroically saved thousands of passengers underground, chaos reigned above, as New Yorkers frantically looked for an escape route from Lower Manhattan, which had begun to look like a war zone.
To the NYC Transit Staten Island Express bus from Teresa Betancourt. I was spared the collapse of the second building only because of the courageous acts of your driver, Anthony Gallo. Anthony rescued about 11 people from the smoke and debris that had overtaken us when the first building had fallen.
Smoke just picked me up and literally pushed me into the glass. It was thick, it was black. My throat had gotten clogged with all the dirt. I couldn't breathe. Somebody had started to yell about breaking the glass on the windows, and somebody had said to walk them hand to hand, which is what we did. We walked the rest of the way to the corner hand to hand. I could see the smoke cleared pretty fast. I could see headlights. I didn't know what it was, and I could hear somebody's voice. I thought they were saying to get on the bus, but they were saying later on, I found out, was follow my voice. I literally handed past the entire bus. The gentleman on the bus came out to get us in the midst of all this black smoke.
And after the people started banging on the bus all around the sides, I mean, you couldn't see outside the bus. I just opened the door and I said, follow my voice. And about 11 people started coming on the bus. They were choking, crying. And I think I just did what any other human being would have done. I mean, you get people banging on the outside the door. They actually gave me a purpose. I knew then that I wasn't dead, that everything was okay. So now, if I can pass that on to somebody else, what the heck?
When I first stepped on the bus, it was a breath of fresh air. I didn't know how long before I had breathed fresh air at that moment. Relief.
What would you say to Anthony now?
Oh God, Anthony is like my guardian angel that I've been dying to meet for a long time. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
While Gallo assisted people near the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, bus operator Chandler had his hands full as well.
Look out in the midst of nowhere, up there, a New York City Transit personnel person. He had on a hard hat, sort of like a raincoat type of gear. I don't know if he worked down underground or what. By this time, I don't know exactly like where people were coming from, out of the woodworks looked like. People had severe injury, laceration to the face, arms area. People had open wounds in the heads. Some people had succumbed to, I don't know if it's smoke inhalation, or a couple ladies had, I believe, asthma attacks. So I had to try to establish some degree of calm. So I opened the door of the bus, talked to him, and people began to come on the bus. I helped assist some people who were not able to come on board the bus of their own ability. Like I said, someone passed out, and this particular gentleman and the security person were helping two ladies. They passed the lady to me, I helped her on the bus. There was another lady in a building saying, wait for me, help me. We went and got her, put her on the bus. By this time, I guess we got about 25 people on the bus. But people were so excited to the point it was being yelled out, leave them out there, let's get out of here, we're gonna die. I said, you know, what I have to do is follow instruction. My instruction is to get you out of this area to a safe location.
As a stunned city, country, and world looked on, transit did what it does best. And in a way, no one ever imagined. It moved to New York.
Within minutes, emergency plans were in place, and from Transit's command center, rail and bus movements were coordinated.
Thanks to the professionalism of the men and women of transit, not one employee, passenger, train, or bus was lost. During the days and months that followed after the attack, over 4,000 employees worked around the clock to search for victims and restore service to Lower Manhattan.
The cataclysm of September 11th caught everyone off guard. Although New York City Transit has been conducting disaster drills for years and planning for every possible scenario, nothing in Transit's experience had prepared them for what happened that day. During the initial moments after the collapse, getting the trains out of the stations and removing passengers to safety was crucial. That's where the years of planning and drills paid off.
We were sent down here to investigate how many trains were left in the area, what was the damage that was caused by the explosions. So the first station that we went to was Portland on the end of the R. We checked that station. We found there was a partial train in the station with about 3 cars, no one on the train. Then we came to Rector Street on the 1. There wasn't any train there. We saw debris and water. Then we walked the tunnel up to Portland Street, and we got within about 300 feet, give or take, of Portland. That's when we saw the building that collapsed right down to the World. There was furniture from the World Trade Center down into the tracks, and steel beams, and it was a total destruction down there.
MTA New York City Transit workers were on hand at ground zero, assisting in any way they could. But they, like everyone else who responded, were not prepared for the devastation they encountered.
Face of this worst attack our country's ever seen on our soil, we were able to respond so quickly. And the MTA is an incredible example. 10:30 in the morning, all service was gone. A little after 12:30, it was beginning to come back, and by the middle of the afternoon, it was more than 2/3 back. And it's a tremendous tribute to the courage and the sacrifice of our MTA workers.
Workers, structure maintainers, signal maintainers all over the city. When the tours ended on a midnight tour, they all flocked down here. Nobody told them to come. They were in the pile along with everybody else. The day went on, we were on a pile. It was, everybody says there's a bucket brigade, but there were no buckets there when I first got there. There were no buckets at all. Everybody was going through the pile by hand.
pulled the steel beams out with the aid of the firemen and local iron workers. We all worked very well together, and we then assisted in extracting the fireman from the wreckage of his truck.
I was down at ground zero, down a hole, alongside a fireman, clearing debris, touching metal that was red hot and just passing it back and forth. I mean, none of us knew that we were tired. A lot of guys were beat, but we kept going. Because we're all Americans, we're TA workers, and we're working side by side with every agency, every other city agency that's our brother and sister in this land, in this beautiful city of New York City.
I've been on active duty since the event took place. I got off the clock 6 o'clock that morning, went home, and that's when I heard the bad news. And before I knew it, the guard called me, and here I am.
Well, first I'd like to say there was nobody panicked, which is a credit to the authority. We had 3,500 people came down here to take part in the rescue by the evening. We had 2 miles of trucks. All people wanted to do was help. It didn't matter if you were a policeman, a fireman, an EMS worker, or a transit worker, or just a plain civilian. Everybody, all they wanted to do was help. And I just thought it was a fantastic response to a very tragic situation.
I see, Hoffman with his boys removing steel beams. Now remember, they needed steel beams removed. Okay, so we have the best and most numerous people who are trained in a short time to remove rails and things like that. And these were the perfect crew to take the beams out, to cut the beams so that the rescue people and the medical people could get the victims. And you remember, there were lots of people that were saved, not only Tuesday, but Wednesday, and they found some people on Thursday. And I think that lots of those people whose lives were saved were as a direct result of MTA and New York City Transit in particular, emergency workers, and the great job they did.
We assembled a command quarters, dump trucks, backhoes, the low loader, which is a big forklift, and we were ready to go within 2 hours. And we were heading down there, which that was amazing to begin with, to say, we're going in. And we were the first on the scene to make a path and remove debris so emergency vehicles can get in. And New York City Transit was right on the ball, they were right there.
Well, it's been very busy, and I'm also happy because as I'm going down with the bus, I see all kind of signs, all people saying we love you, New York City Transit, we thank you and we love you, and that's a good feeling because they appreciate what we're doing.
It wasn't just the emergency services, the police and fire and EMTs who acted as heroes on that day. Thousands of ordinary New Yorkers showed incredible courage, and in particular, so many of our MTA workers responded with an incredible willingness to risk their lives, to protect the people, to help the people of New York.
The men and women of MTA New York City Transit would like to thank you for taking the time to watch this historic documentary. And I also feel that the moment is historic. Well, it was on that fateful day, here, at this place, that our city, our state, our nation, our people were put to the test. And once again, as Americans, we rose to face the challenge. I'm Marcia Davis, and I thank you for watching. I thank you also for riding with New York City Transit.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce the recording secretary, Latanya Christopher Ray. She would like to say a few words.
Good evening, sisters and brothers. Whenever I see that video, it really takes something out of me. It's almost like reliving that day all over again. And when you're sitting here and you're watching that video, you can only go back in recollection and say, where were you on that day? And this pill is bittersweet because my birthday is 9/12. So every year, we relive it, you go back to that moment, you become very solemn, but then you remember that that was a day that we acted upon being human beings, being human to one another, loving one another, working together to accomplish one thing: survival. When I stand here and looked up the word recognition, it said the acknowledgement of something as valid or as entitled to consideration. But I like the one where it actually says formal acknowledgement conveying approval. And that's what this acknowledgement is about today. Approval of the services of the transit workers on that day. So I say to you all, thank you. They have the saying with all gave some gave all. We stand here today as one body, one mind, one union, happy to know that transit workers was part, are you all hearing? We were part of rescue and recovery, and no one can ever take that away from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant, for those words. You know, the video, before we go on to the next part, one thing that comes to mind is that, you know, transit workers, not only are they there in times of natural or man-made disasters, but as one of the guys in the film shows, no sooner did all of that happen, he had to, you know, put on a military uniform and go serve out there and fight these folks. And in my shop, 2 guys did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, you know, transit workers are out there helping you in a blackout, floods, you name it, and they march off to war as well. So think about that the next time you see a transit worker wearing a vest or a uniform. Okay? So I'd like to take this opportunity now to invite to the podium Noah Kluszewski, who's the senior partner of Kreindler & Kreindler, a law firm that has really helped us out in terms of our ability to do this in the first place, have this event, be able to give these medals out. Okay? You know.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I'm supposed to talk a little bit about the Victim Compensation Fund. I'm really proud to have had the opportunity to sponsor the medal program with Transit Workers Union. The reason that, but I want to just take a minute to explain how that came about. It really came about because the leadership of your union has been more proactive than any other union in the city in informing its constituents and its members about their rights, in making sure that they understand all of the opportunities available to them, both with the Victim Compensation Fund and the World Trade Center Health Program. And my involvement in the medal program and my assistance in sponsoring the medal program is a direct offshoot of your union leadership actually caring. The transit workers had more than 3,000 people down at 9/11. I've worked with plenty, and by the way, their caring doesn't end at information, because I represent people from a lot of different unions in the city, and there's no other union that has been more helpful to the lawyers in getting information to help the members bring claims in the Victim Compensation Fund. You all should be very proud of your union, because most of them have done nothing to this date, and this union got involved early on and has been active year after year after year. And I'm extremely proud to be the lawyer that has been recommended to the membership of the transit workers, mostly because of the quality of leadership in bringing information to the members. That being said, I'd like to speak a little bit about the Victim Compensation Fund, and I'd also, most people here, I have many people here are my clients already, and I hope we're doing a good job for you. I hope we're representing you well. we're giving you the information that you need, and we're doing right by you. The union leadership has entrusted me and my firm with that responsibility, and if anybody has any problems or complaints, you can talk to Rashad over there. That was a joke. The most important thing that the people in this room can do is give information to people that are not in this room. The number of people citywide, not just members of Transit Workers Local 100, but people that live down there, people that work down there, people that were exposed and are affected health-wise. There are so many people that still have no idea about the programs that are available to them. And the programs are extremely important for a variety of reasons. The health program, which you're going to hear about later, provides free health care. It provides annual monitoring, and it helps identify problems that people that were exposed may be having before even they themselves appreciate that they're going through something or suffering from something. The Victim Compensation Fund was designed to provide compensation to people that are suffering a certain group of illnesses after exposure on 9/11. There are a lot of illnesses that are included. Nobody should ever believe or suppose that a particular illness is not included until somebody tells them that it isn't, either a lawyer or somebody from the health program. The most important thing about the Victim Compensation Fund is that it's a program based on presumptions. And by that I mean you only need to prove, A, that you were exposed to the bad air in Lower Manhattan sometime between September 11, 2001 and June 30 of 2002 for a certain number of hours. After that, all you have to demonstrate is a diagnosis. It's a very unusual program because you don't have to prove a relationship between the exposure and an illness or condition. And for that reason, many people get diagnosed with certain types of cancers or respiratory illnesses and don't appreciate the fact that the government, your government, is willing to and wants to draw the line between A and B and compensate you. The compensation is on very many different levels. There's compensation for pain and suffering, but even more importantly, there's compensation for disability, and if somebody's unable to continue working or is unable to continue providing services for their family, the government is ready to step in. There's $7.5 billion that's available. So the smartest thing to do, and to tell your friends and your colleagues and your coworkers and your neighbors, is to talk to somebody to see whether you have a claim, whether you have a right to participate in the health program or the Victim Compensation Fund. The other thing I want to share before I sit down is that there are certain deadlines that are involved in bringing it in. The health program has now been funded through 2048, something like that. So it's going to be around for all of our lifetimes. The Victim Compensation Fund right now is set to close in December of 2020, which means that anybody with a potential claim needs to get it filed by then. That's a very important date. We're going to fight really hard to get it extended. The union has been great about participating in the fight to get reauthorization from 2015 to 2020. Now we've got to go back in 2.5 years and do it again. The other important thing to keep in mind is that when you go to the health program and they certify you for a condition, you have 2 years from the date of certification to register your claim. Otherwise, your claim is not timely and you lose it. So what we recommend to people is you start at Mount Sinai and you start in the health program, you get monitored, you get an examination, and you find out if maybe you have something you don't even know you have, a respiratory condition that can be identified. And once you're certified, you give us a call and we help you with your claim. I want to thank everybody here for coming. I want to thank the union leadership, John who's not here, for allowing us this opportunity. And if anybody has any questions, we're going to be sitting over here for the rest of the evening. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Remember, this is all about, protecting your families, okay? This is really what it's all about. Okay. Our next guest will be a representative from the 9/11 September 11th Memorial Museum, which is of course located in the World Trade Center. I'd like to welcome Amy Weinstein.
Thank you for asking me to join you this afternoon to mark the 16th anniversary of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. As New Yorkers, I imagine that many of you are like me, and as August turns into September each year, you cannot help but recall where you were that day and the range of emotions that engulfed you as the hours passed. My day intersected with yours during the morning rush hour, when I was on an A train headed uptown and had no idea that I was traveling beneath the World Trade Center moments before hijacked Flight 11 struck the North Tower. And again in the afternoon when I walked back home to Brooklyn. As I walked downtown from the Upper West Side, I saw New York City buses filled beyond capacity, yet still stopping to take on more passengers. When I got to the Brooklyn side of the Williamsburg Bridge, one of the most welcome sights was a fleet of city buses waiting to take thousands of those who had crossed the river on foot further into Brooklyn. Although a uniformed police officer encouraged me to board one of those buses, and I even got a seat, I hopped off when the driver announced Coney Island as his destination. I lived only a few blocks from where we are today in Brooklyn Heights and had a feeling that maybe the G train might be running. Although subway service had indeed been halted in the morning, the G was back on the job by mid-afternoon. So, I'd like to thank that train operator and all of the members of the Transport Workers Union Local 100 for all that you did to help us get home that day. You certainly lived up to your motto, "We move New York." I've told you part of my own story as a way of saying I hope that you'll share your stories of service and valor with the museum. Firefighters have told me how city bus drivers drove them to Lower Manhattan that morning. I know that you searched subway stations to make sure that no one was trapped or stranded at Cortlandt Street, Rector Street, and that you served at Ground Zero throughout the 9-month recovery period. I know that because I visited the Transit Museum and its exhibition about your response to disaster over the years. And I know that because I watched your video on YouTube that morning. Seeing it this afternoon was the second time for me today, so it kind of got me. I heard your photographer giving that eyewitness account to a TV reporter as you saw Flight 175 overhead and flying into the South Tower, and heard train operators, bus operators, dispatchers telling their stories. I know that you brought your tools, generators, expertise, and commitment to the rescue and recovery, and think that the rest of the world needs to hear those stories as well. I'm pleased to tell you that 29 individuals affiliated with Local 100 have already shared their stories with the 9/11 Museum by joining our online rescue and recovery workers registry. One Local 100 member wrote that he remembered watching the Twin Towers under construction as he stood on the pile of wreckage. If Dominic Spagnolo, Michael Mineta, or Salvador Martinez, or any of those who registered are here tonight, I hope you'll join me in encouraging your colleagues to do the same. I've brought some cards with me so that you can take the internet address for the registries home with you. As registered rescue and recovery workers, you'll also be able to visit the museum at no charge. As you enter the museum, you'll walk through a soundscape of voices recalling where they were on the morning of September 11th, 2001. I could, but I promise I won't, talk for hours about the museum. I hope you'll visit the museum yourself, and I'd be happy to talk with any of you following the program. And I especially hope that maybe you'll invite me back again to another meeting, and I'll tell you more about the museum's oral history program and how you might participate. We need to hear from you. The museum's visitors need to hear from you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Okay, our next guest is from the 9/11 Tribute Center. I'd like to welcome Ku Farrar. I got it right.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for having me tonight. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Ku Farrar, and I am the outreach manager at the 9/11 Tribute Museum, which is not to be confused with the Memorial Museum, as it often is. Our mission at the Tribute Museum is to tell our visitors personal stories of 9/11 from the people who experienced it directly. And the way we are able to do this is through our volunteer program. And basically, we stretch out through 5 constituency groups: rescue recovery workers, survivors, family members who lost loved ones on that day, civilian volunteers, as well as residents of Lower Manhattan who were displaced at that time. To give a brief history of Tribute, we were actually founded in 2006 by what is now called the 9/11 Families Association, which was a group of family members who lost loved ones on 9/11. And as I stated, our mission is to tell the story of those who were lost on that day, to honor their memories, to share the stories of people who survived, and to inspire the youth going forward and to educate them about 9/11. So the way we are able to do this is through our volunteer program, and the way we do this is through guided tours and our galleries. Recently, we have moved to a new location. We used to be on Liberty Street, but now we are at 92 Greenwich Street in Lower Manhattan, which is right down the street. And we have expanded our museum to feature service workers such as yourselves, because typically the story of 9/11 and the recovery is kind of, it's not necessarily reserved for NYPD, FDNY, and those agencies, but for everybody else. So our mission now is to really tell your stories. Sorry, I'm really nervous and cold.
You're doing great.
So as I said, all of our volunteers are people who have connections to 9/11. No general public is allowed to volunteer in our program. It's strictly this for the purpose of telling these personal stories, so people can understand the depth and to personalize 9/11, because we have various exhibits and memorials that kind of give you the broad facts, but for people to really understand it and to really feel the connection if they weren't here, is to hear those personal stories. So through our volunteer program, we have guided tours that tour the memorial, and it's a history of Lower Manhattan. It's a history there, then they share their personal stories, and we typically have a guide lead, and then a support. So we usually have 2 stories per tour. And through this, people get that deep connection, and really, from what we hear back from our visitors, it connects, it moves them more than seeing pictures and reading stories and watching videos. So it's vitally important to share these stories with the public and our international pool of visitors, because we don't want to forget. We can never forget. And the way we will never forget is by sharing our stories. So with that, I will be here for the rest of the evening. I have passes for all of you for free admission to the museum to really see and experience our galleries, to experience our walking tours. And as I said, your story is vital. Most of the general public does not understand the work that you did on and after 9/11. And it's part of our mission to make sure that your stories are told to all of them, so that they can go back to wherever they come from, whether it's another part of the US or anywhere internationally, to share their stories so that they know that the transit workers played a vital role in the recovery process. So with that, I thank you to the leadership for inviting me, thank you Mario for inviting me, and if you would like a pass, find me here. Sorry, I'll be here until the end, so with that, thank you.
Okay, next I would like to invite to say a few words from the Mount Sinai Health Screening Program, Vivian Escragima, Outreach and Education Coordinator at Mount Sinai.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to keep this very short and sweet because I think everyone kind of covered everything. Like Mario said, I am an Outreach and Education Coordinator over at the World Trade Center Health Program's Clinical Center of Excellence at Mount Sinai. And I definitely want to thank TWU Local 100 for inviting me here. It's really an honor to be here with you guys, truly. So, as many of you may know, the World Trade Center Health Program has been around for about 16 years now. Thanks to the James Odroga Health and Compensation Act that was signed into law back in 2011. Don't know if anyone remembers President Obama doing that, but when he did that, he created two programs. He created the Victims Compensation Fund and the World Trade Center Health Program. Now, the World Trade Center Health Program is only the medical component. We cover any World Trade related illness or condition. We'll help you see doctors for free. We'll help you get whatever treatment you need for free. And like he said before, you get an annual, you get a yearly monitoring visit in which you get a total physical. And then the other component is the Victims Compensation Fund, which he told you a little bit about. They are two separate applications and two separate enrollment processes, but there are people specially designed to help you with both. That's why we're here today. So if anyone is not registered with the program, you should be. If you know anybody who isn't registered with the program, you really need to be, especially since recently the Victims Compensation Fund actually implemented a new policy where now it is actually kind of mandatory to be part of the World Trade Center Health Program. In order to file a claim with the Victims Compensation Fund now, which we affectionately refer to as the VCF, in order to file a claim with the VCF now, you need medical documentation from the World Trade Center Health Program. So now more than ever, it's actually really critical for people to join, and especially since these conditions are getting worse and worse every year, guys. So please, if you guys aren't part of it, if you know someone who isn't part of it, please come see at a table, please come ask questions, we're here for you.
All right. I'd like to give special thanks to the gentleman seated right here to my left, Maintenance Away Vice President Tony Yatano, because here at the TWU, if you're an elected officer, staff member, you wear a lot of hats. We do a lot of different things. It's really crazy the range of the responsibilities you have here. You're a marriage counselor, you're suicide hotline, you're everything. And you're talking to people with your wife sleeping next to you. It's really, really busy. And this whole thing, the folks at Kreindler & Kreindler foot the bill for all this rather expensive stuff. However, the guy who freed me up to pursue all this was Tony, because he's a good boss in that he has faith that whatever I was thinking of doing would, look like it was a good idea. And again, I'm not that high in the union hierarchy, so he had to free me up from my usual, mundane, responsibilities, and from my boss, John Chirillo, who's over there, and and allow me to do all this, because when I was doing this, it robbed him of the resources and the time that he would normally, have me available for. So again, I would like to thank John and our President John Samuelson, but again, Tony was the guy who was there to say, that looks like a good idea, go for it. It's long overdue. It's a bit of an injustice that our guys have not been recognized the way they should have it at this time. So before we go on to the next part of the program, which is the presentation of the 9/11 injured 9/11 rescue recovery medals, we'll try to start something new, something we can do now, and that is if there's anybody present here who has already received one, would you mind standing up just for a moment? Okay. And a little bit about the program itself, very briefly. We figured we really want to honor these guys the right way, and there was some ideas thrown about, and we figured that, it was a really big deal to go down there and do what these guys did, and then be exposed to stuff down there to the extent that it resulted in serious injuries, and in the case of some of our fallen brothers, even death. So, you know, the metal was something that, if you look at it here, it was, we approached, again, because we had the resources to do it, we approached the firm of Northwest Territory Mint / Medallic Arts. That is the company that has the exclusive contract to do the Medal of Honor, which is the highest honor in the nation. It's something that it's protocol for the President of the United States to put it on you. The Peabody Award, the National Foundation Science Award, all the top military medals are made by these guys. And I thought it was fitting that we go and approach only them. But it was a little scary. I was scared they'd tell us to get lost. And so, you know, what I did was I did some sketches. My daughter, who I'm always hammering when it comes to things about history, who did that video that was shown earlier, I made her do a report on it for school. She got an A on it. So it's she helped me actually do this design. And I thought it was just going to be a rough idea of what they would like to do. Well, about 2 months later, they emailed me back, said that their art department liked it so much they're not going to touch it. So there it is. And just to go over some of the features. Yeah, so basically the features are, some of them are fairly obvious. You have the trident design of the World Trade Center as it used to be. Well, all of this is based on photographs that myself and others took on the morning of September 12th. This is the trident beams at the bottom, stripped of their stainless steel cladding from all the explosive force of everything that was flying around. And of course, this is the southwest corner of the southwest corner of the South Tower. This is the remnants of the northwest corner of Tower number 1, as you would have seen it if you were there, looking northwest. This is a very important feature right here, and this is a little message I have for the really good folks at the museum. You know, when you put a museum like what you guys have done, I would say you guys did not have the benefit of certain information. The 9/11, the Ground Zero site in the first 48 hours, this is something mostly known to transit workers that were there, was extremely secure. In fact, it blew me away. Myself and my crew were coming out of a train station at Chambers West Broadway, and there was a uniformed police officer on a small scooter attempting to get past the military folks that were at that checkpoint. And as he approached, he was smiling and giving him a wave, and they weren't smiling. They actually told him to stop, and he didn't stop. And I saw something I thought I'd never see. They knocked him off the motorcycle, and he landed right on the dust that was in the ground, created a big plume. And I was saying to myself, my God, what is this? I can't believe what I'm seeing. And the cop got up, smiled, apologized to the soldiers, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I understand." And I overheard them say, "No, we have strict orders. Nobody, unless we check their credentials, we have to make sure you're a real cop. We're really paranoid about what might happen next. And absolutely, positively, nobody from the press. Nobody. Whatever, the few press people that got in under false pretenses, or just simply found a clever way to sneak in. And that is what I theorize, at least that's my theory, that might be behind the the absence of pictures taken by, press outlets of our guys doing what they were doing, especially in the first 48 hours. Our guys were down there with all sorts of equipment, and in particular this thing right here, these grapplers that are manufactured by Kobelco in Kobe, Japan. Those were the only pieces of heavy equipment that were moving the actual debris, and they were all being operated by our structure maintainers and folks in the track department, and as well as all the Caterpillar front loaders and those huge forklifts you saw in the film. Another feature here is, of course, the big dump trucks. These were, for the most part, all track department. We're operating these guys. This is all based in an actual photograph on Church Street of that morning of the 12th. This here is a vintage our train, the one that was being operated by Mr. Ramirez, who was in the film, where he described how he got the last people who were standing around in Cortland on the R and didn't know what to do, and he urged them to get on before something really bad happened. And that station, really bad things happened to it, including a piece of the tower coming right through to the tracks, or rather on the one train. But here, the dust and the amount of debris and the lighting fixtures that had come down on the platform would have certainly hurt people and perhaps killed them. And he got them all out of there. And then, of course, our bus operators, including my brother Joel, who was supposed to come. I don't see him. He did 36 years with Mapstoa, and he was among the guys who was down there driving people in and out of that area. And he was exposed to a lot of stuff himself, and he's one of the kind of guys that don't go for screenings, and I've been trying to get him to go. He doesn't want to go. But, so this is all the medal that was put together for these guys. We are proud that we were able to do it for them. We thought that they should get nothing less than a medal like this. And the fella who's pictured in the center is a guy named Sal Martinez, who got a medal last year, cancer survivor. Well, there goes your medal. That's what you'll be getting today, okay? Special thanks to my buddy Kevin McCauley. Right there. We're like happening in Costello, where he's like straight man, but we're always arguing and laughing and arguing again and laughing, but because of that, good ideas come about. So I always bounce off ideas from him all the time, and he's been very helpful with all this stuff, and Mount Sinai and Kreindler and Kreindler. Very good man. Okay, so now we're going to start presenting the medals. Okay, so first up, I'd like to ask Mr. Louis Barbieri to come to the front. Okay. And to help give out the medals, I'm going to ask our officers to come forward.
Face this way. This way. I want to pass the chance. Let's go. Alan, why don't you take it from over there so you can get the back line? Okay, good idea. Yeah. All right, great. We'll just wait for Tony to get next to you. Okay, sure. Yeah, move back a little bit. We'll send you this picture. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, next up, I'd like to ask Mr. James W. Blake to come up, please. Okay, I'd like to now ask Mr. Henry Feliciano to please come to the front. Okay, I'd like to introduce Vice President Eric Echevarria. He's from the Stations Department. I don't know if he just arrived, but there he is, the Vice President. Okay, next I'd like to ask Mr. Ronald Geiling to please come to the front, please. Okay, next, I'd like to ask Mr. Elton Gooding to please come to the front. Okay, next I'd like to ask this fellow to come up. It's notable to mention that this gentleman, was it last year that he saved the life of a coworker who was basically being electrocuted by a third rail, and saved her. You know, unfortunately she lost a good portion of her arm, but thanks to this gentleman, she's here. And alive now, and so therefore I'd like to invite Mr. David Martinez to come forward. Okay. Just going to give Mr. Martinez a chance to set his own medal down, and now a Sept on behalf of Mr. Peter Gibbons. Mr. Peter Gibbons is a very senior employee of the Transit Authority, now retired, a Tier 1 in fact, and I would like that Mr. David Martinez should accept the medal on his behalf. His condition has taken a turn for the worse, and he could not come. Okay, here is sticking my neck out. I'm not sure these folks actually made it. I had to walk away, but let's hope they're here. I would like to invite to the front now Mr. James Holland. Okay, Mr. James Holland is someone who unfortunately now is wheelchair bound, and the family assured me that we're going to try to get him down here as best they could, but it looks like it didn't happen. So we'll make sure, we'll arrange a private presentation. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Thomas Somo Jr. Okay, Mr. Somos apparently was hinting that he was having a serious family issue, namely trying to take care of a house that might get destroyed in Florida, so looks like he didn't make it. So we'll make sure he gets his medal. Okay. Now, we left this gentleman for last. It's out of alphabetical order, but it's for a good reason. This is for Mr. James Delman. Mr. Delman is, someone who... was that? Is very, very sick, and accepting the award on his behalf is his little granddaughter, Sadie Delman. Okay, now this is the part of the program where we're going to present participation pins for the members that attest to being at Ground Zero and participating in 9/11 rescue and recovery efforts. If you have filled out paperwork upon entering here to receive one of these, we need you to form a line in the middle of the center aisle, please, at this time.
I don't know. Where you working?
Okay, fellows, you can start coming forward to receive your pins. They're going to be handed out by the top officers. Please. Okay, yes. So if you guys have your vouchers, no, you can go over there online. Yeah, just wait a moment. If you have your paperwork with you, just this gentleman here in a blue shirt, you just surrender your paperwork to this gentleman here, and come forward for your pins. Yeah, no particular order. If you've given your paperwork to the gentleman that I just pointed out, just please come forward.
You can drink your soda. I didn't know you had a brother. My friend John. There's something that's changed about anonymous. It doesn't have any what you sorry. If I was saying, I don't mean it, you know,
I call this one, they're collecting data. The data says 3,000 people. Yeah, definitely down. One like 96. And you have to wait for that data to come in. You know, it may sound dumb, right? It's like,
Hi, everybody. Just real quick, I wanted to ask one quick question before we go. My name is Kevin McCauley, TWU staff. I'm also part of the 9/11 group. Go ahead. You know what it is? Really quickly, how many people in here were at 9/11? By a show of hands. Okay, out of that show of hands, how many people are signed up for the health fund? Okay, the people that put their hands down, please go over and talk to the people from Mount Sinai. All right, a lot of you have health benefits and you think, I don't need that, but they're trained to look for things that only come from 9/11 exposure. All right, you might have a bronchitis, you go to your doctor or something, you might have something, you think it's bronchitis, the doctor will tell you it's bronchitis, they'll know it might be something else. You know what I mean? I've been signed up since 2002, they do a fantastic job. Go over and speak to Vivian, she's a true friend at TWU, Local 100. She's been working with us for years on this, all right? Also, by a show of hands, how many people are signed up for the BCF? Okay, that's there to protect you and your families, you know what I mean? So, before you leave tonight, get over to these two tables, see these people sign up to protect you and your families. Thank you. And also, you know, now we're going to have food.
Okay, listen, as Mr. Rapoli just said, there's food and refreshments, and Kevin, the wall. Okay, into the partition. Until the partition that's there is folded back, you guys are welcome to go out, make a left at the door, and into the neighboring room. There's food and refreshments there. Please help. Really good stuff. And furthermore, while the food is being served, we're going to show an excerpt of a documentary that the union has put together about 9/11, transit workers' services at 9/11. It'll be playing while everyone is eating here, so you can check out and get a little sneak preview of it, okay?